Hello everyone, welcome to October's Friday Flashback review on the CC Network. I am Fred, your ever-reliable host as always, ready to get you into the Halloween spirit for this upcoming weekend by doing the official violent resurgence of the ECW brand in ECW's One Night Stand 2006. And this was requested by a good friend of mine, Ray Lott, quite some time ago. I know it's been a while to get this one out there, but like I say every time, I hope I do this event justice, because you really wanted me to have a look at it. Nonetheless, let's look at the history of this. ECW had been confirmed to return as an official WWE brand sometime after WrestleMania 22, and with this event, we're ready to set sail on what many had hoped, that is inverted most definitely, for something different from the traditional WWE product, and with ECW original Rob Van Dam challenging WWE's poster boy John Cena for the championship, and with many ECW alumni, much like the first Supercard a year prior, making the show somewhat interesting, yeah, this could state their intent and have these wrestlers come to take a slice of WWE's lucrative pie. And all sounded pretty good on paper, and with the positive reception of the original inaugural event looming on the mind, they had a lot to live up to. So let's hope that these guys could give the ECW brand a good pedestal to stand on. ECW One Night Stand 2006 was held on June 11th, 2006 inside the Hammerstein Ballroom in the depths of good old New York, New York, with 2,460 rabid ECW fans piling in to see all the action. Now, ECW's history in this venue is actually quite paramount, with not only both One Night Stand revival shows taking place here, but November 2000's beautifully titled Massacre on 34th Street and its last major event, 2001's Guilty as Charged, were done inside the ballroom as well, along with some future ECW WWE TV tapings in 2007. Not just ECW and WWE have loved this venue, but Ring of Honor and TNA have also hosted shows here down the line as well. Finally, of course, I have to highlight this, Bodies by Drowning Pool, the theme of WWE's version of ECW, served as the aptly appropriate theme song alongside ECW's original song that appeared in the title intro for this thing. Now, with all that out of the way, we have a lot to get through, and, as I will highlight, it is ECW, let the bodies hit the floor, and let this review begin. In the first match of the night, we have SmackDown vs. Raw, because that had to come through for ECW One Night Stand for the second year running, didn't it? As two popular announcers went head-to-head, with ECW original Taz taking on Jerry the King Lawler. For many years, hailing back to ECW's original invasion of WWE and WWE's subsequent invasion of ECW events in 1997, Jerry the King Lawler always had his disdain for the Extreme brand, and had no barriers held on him in resuming his anti-ECW tirades building up to this event, especially after he mocked Joey Styles about lacking the spirit of ECW, forcing the fabled commentator of the Extreme to lay out that fantastic worked shoot promo and quit his position as head announcer of Raw. Soon afterwards, his rant specifically targeted SmackDown commentator and former ECW champion Taz, with the King calling him a Jerry Lawler wannabe. I'm not sure how you can take offense to that, but Taz did, challenging his Raw counterpart to a one-on-one match at One Night Stand. And the next Monday night, Lawler rebuked, calling out Taz's poor announcing skills and the fact that his choking out of opponents for years was illegal, and that he would accept Taz's challenge to teach him what a real wrestler is like. Whew, this is quite heated, isn't it? On the WWE vs. ECW special held a week before the show, after spending most of the night exchanging heated words with each other, they brawled, crossing opposing announce tables to fight, which is lovely. And Taz finally hit a death nail, noting on the last SmackDown before the event a few days later that not only will he choke out Lawler on Sunday, but he'll also be leaving the Blue Brand's announce desk for the first time to go home to ECW following the match. It's pretty heated stuff, isn't it? And you'd be thinking that a match between these two would actually be pretty solid considering the wrestlers we have on show. Well, you'd actually be completely and 100% wrong, as Taz choked out Lawler in a measly 35 seconds to claim the first scalp for ECW on the night. He later returned to the announce desk with Joey Styles to commentate on the rest of the evening, living up to the promise that he mentioned on SmackDown a few nights prior. Now, this feud was built up over petty squabbles that really didn't need too much to substantiate themselves, and to have such a short match was probably necessary. Taz wasn't in the best of shape at the time, so therefore he couldn't put on a long match. Understandably, neither was King in the best shape either. To have Taz choke out such a vocal critic of the brand for so many years was most likely just a very satisfying move to bait the New York crowd with and get them off to even more rabid start than they already were. And honestly, it succeeded. However, even with Joey Styles not only getting bitch slapped by King during his entrance, but attempting to interfere, and a crowd loving the absolute mayhem and the quick fall, the match just didn't really have much else of substance, and as a result, for its length and everything else, gets a 0. That may seem harsh, but if a commentator interference is really all this match has alongside a Taz mission, I can't really rate it that highly on my rating scale, can I? I can't be too kind, and the fact is some people wouldn't even consider this a proper match, so I'm giving it some leniency, even if I'm not being the most warm-hearted soul I could be on this autumn night of ours. Next, we have the first official quote-unquote match of the evening with an ECW versus SmackDown bout, pitting the Extreme brand's newest acquisition in Kurt Angle against Randy Orton. Now, after Angle and Orton both lost to Rey Mysterio in that acclaimed but very short triple threat match at WrestleMania 22, Angle blamed Orton for costing him his championship and responded by breaking his ankle in the ankle lock on SmackDown. Now, in actuality, this was to cover for Orton's recent suspension at the hands of the wellness policy. Now, was it 60 or 30 days? I cannot remember for the life of me. ECW GM Paul Heyman, using the 2 draft picks he was allocated by Vince McMahon, chose Rob Van Dam and then Kurt Angle, to the surprise of many, especially considering that Angle was anti-ECW 12 months earlier in the build-up to One Night Stand's original event, and he also had a bad taste in his mouth following the Sandman crucifixion angle. You know, back in 1996, shortly after he won the gold medal at the Atlanta Olympics. Pretty crazy, but Heyman said that all of the past discretions did not matter because everyone wanted to join his new vision of what a new ECW would be, even those who once turned a blind eye to it. Angle surprisingly appeared on Raw in his hometown of Pittsburgh, despite being a SmackDown talent, of course, after issuing an open challenge for anyone to take him on at One Night Stand. And on that past week's SmackDown, Mick Foley then hyped up as well at that time that Edge would be the perfect candidate to take on Angle, as he'd beaten the Olympian more than anyone else on the roster, and if you look at the records it's true, and ran down their rivalries over the years, as well as proclaiming that the moment Angle became ECW's draft pick was the time where his career has technically come to an end. Angle responded by saying that his ECW is one that he will change and be more different than its prior incarnation. And fueled by anger, he beat up literally everyone in sight, but suddenly, Randy Orton came in and hit an RKO out of nowhere, accepting Angle's challenge and making this match official. And finally, on that WWE vs ECW special, Angle was eliminated by Orton in the brand vs brand battle royale to increase the tension, following with Orton saying prior to the match that he felt sorry for Angle, noting that he went from world champion and WrestleMania headliner to ECW nobody in just 2 months, with Angle stating that he will face a new ECW-bred wrestling machine, one who will do nothing but kick ass. And with Angle laying it all on the line, he would not only re-break Orton's ankle, but follow up with his arms, legs, and neck if he has to. Whew! This is pretty intense stuff. This ECW pay-per-view already sounds pretty damn intense, and the crowd are feeling like they need to rile themselves up. What more can we do? Ladies and gentlemen, I have some great news for all of you, because we have a 3-star plus quality match here, which means in-depth play-by-play is incoming. Here we go. The crowd chant for Angle to fuck Orton up as the bell rings, which is lovely, isn't it, from a New York crowd who don't take subtlety very well. Angle goes for Orton as the Legend Killer leaves the ring, with the crowd following up with pussy chants, much to Taz and Joey Styles' delight, because he's a superstar, he doesn't know what fighting's like. Oh my god. Back in the ring, a double leg takedown allows for an ankle lock, but Orton crawls out due to the squirming under the ropes. Angle's gonna kill you chants break out as a collar elbow tie-up turns into a side headlock by Angle, coupled with fuck you Orton chants. God, this crowd are very violent and it's really starting to come into its own. Orton breaks out of the headlock, but again, due to Angle's pace, goes out of the ring, telling the ECW fans to shut the fuck up, which is censored on the network version, despite all the vile, putrid stuff that came out of the fans' mouths on the night. Really, really stupid. Nonetheless, Angle mauls Orton to the ground with a takedown and begins to slap and push the forearms into Orton's head with a "you got bitch slap" chant coming from the crowd for equal measure. Angle taunts Orton to put a headlock on him, which he reverses out of very, very, very easily. Angle then gets out a second time as Orton goes for a more frustrated approach, and the third time results in a belly-to-back suplex to the mat. Orton's backed into the corner, he dodges a running shoulder thrust, sending Angle into the steel post, allowing for Orton to finally take control as he takes aim at Angle's head and shoulder. But Angle fights back with a lifting takedown. Orton fights back with a deliberate eye poke and spinning back elbow off an Irish whip for the first pin attempt of the match, with Angle kicking out at 1 because he's a damn machine. The fans start chanting, I love this, go fuck Cena, as I see an excited fan looking to have a seizure in the crowd because he can't believe the crowd have just said such a thing. Anyway, Orton throws Angle violently into the turnbuckle, going back to the back of the head, covering for 2 as "you can't wrestle" chants break out, with Orton applying a headlock only for Angle to counter into a half Nelson, covering for 2 as the crowd chant "Orton sucks dick." Oh, good God almighty, it's going to get worse all night, you know. Only for Orton to bite and elbow his way out of the hole because he's that damn desperate, and applies a rear naked choke, with Orton's a homo chants now coming out. And with boring chants following not too far behind because Headlock and Chinlock City ain't their favourite place to go. This crowd is just insane. As Angle fights out of the pain and goes for a belly-to-belly, but Orton counters with an eye rake. Angle reverses round looking for a German suplex, but an elbow to the head stops him in his tracks. Orton looked to have gained momentum, but isn't hit with the German. Both men that look exhausted, as even with Orton's speed, Angle can keep up as both men lay blows into each other, with Angle lining up some uppercuts and a forearm to the back of the head and the triple German suplexes. Angle goes for the Angle slam, but Orton counters with an arm drag and a missile dropkick to the button for 2. Orton goes for his patented backbreaker, but Angle counters into a belly-to-back suplex and drops the straps, because you know what's coming. The Angle slam hits, but Orton kicks out at 2. Then we've got the break his ankle chance as Angle wants to go straight for the ankle lock. But Angle doesn't realise that Orton is still wily because that angle hasn't been targeted most of the match. Orton fights out of it, hitting the neck wrench backbreaker that I love, and he covers, but Angle this time kicks out at 2. Orton lines up the RKO, Angle counters but is hit by an elbow right to the nose. More "you suck dick" chants break out as Orton counters the top rope belly to belly and hits Angle with a crossbody. Angle rolls through, but Orton kicks out at 2 with the Legend Killer rebounding with an explosive clothesline. The crowd start applauding both men, willing them to their feet because, yes, of course they're going to do after tearing into Orton all through this thing. It's really weird. Orton goes for the RKO again, Angle counters going for the ankle lock, which Orton then counters into a roll-up. Angle kicks out and finally locks the hold in, grapevine included. Orton is then writhing in pain, tapping out fast, giving ECW's wrestling machine the victory in 15 minutes and 17 seconds. This match was intense and physical, allowing for Angle to show off a new aggression to his in-ring style that would follow him to TNA later this same year. And it played off the story well, as Orton was afraid to get in as Angle preyed on that ankle. Angle had most of its momentum in his hands, but when Orton got his chance, his offense was effective and powerful, still making him look like a viable threat despite having a weak point mentally and physically, as Angle looked to and successfully take advantage. The crowd, I have to say, as you may not have noticed, were savage, berating Orton at every chance they got, and while I credit them for making this match feel great, they often distracted from the match and didn't complement it well, not appreciating the in-ring effort till near its conclusion, as I noted, which was noted that the match was more one-sided than expected, which neutered its flow a lot. And inevitably, especially in the early going, this was the case. There's Angle trying to get inside Orton's head, which the crowd, who aren't being entertained by the in-ring psychology of all this, started their creative onslaught, which is really strange. While I loved watching this, I wish the ankle was worked on more as the match built up in aggression and intensity, because the main focal point of the build-up was the ankle, and that wasn't highlighted until right at the end of the match. And yeah, it still left me wanting more, because even though it was worked on it briefly, it needed more to make the match feel fuller than it was. Now, this match was a great showcase of Angle's ability and Orton's capability to hang with him, and it was a great match and one that deserves another watch, getting 3 3/4 stars from me. It was just off the psychology scale and the match length and pacing scale to get a 4. And I will also point out, it was the best match of the night. Yeah. A bit mad, isn't it? And the fact is, usually when I say that is the best match of the night this early on in a card, I usually have bated breath saying, oh, it's going to get worse from here. Just you wait and see, because this event tries its hardest to try and live up to this barnstormer. Next, we have an ECW Tag Team Exhibition match, pitting the fully blooded Italians, Tony Mamaluke and Little Guido, formerly known as Nunzio, of course, taking on Tajiri and Super Crazy. Now, there's no need for me to talk about this one in depth, because this is just an exhibition match made on the evening. But there is one thing I need to note, and that is this is Tajiri's first appearance in the company since the autumn 2005 Japanese tour, which is all pretty good. The crowd love Tajiri, as do I. It should be a fun match. Speaking of said match, the fully blooded Italians defeated Super Crazy and the returning Tajiri in 12 minutes and 24 minutes of tag team action. This match, I've got to say, surprised me. It was a million times better than anything I expected it to be. And while there was no story to it, these guys were more than willing to make up for it with some utterly insane moves, showcasing the creativity that ECW's roster utilised to bring all the crowds in all those years ago. When they couldn't bring it in with the violence and technical ability wasn't really showing, they highlighted athleticism and more, and this match was a prime example of it. Now, I could name them all now, but the 4.5 move variety rating I've given here should do them justice enough. And in fact, it's the main reason this match was so enjoyable, not only for me watching, but also for being the lone reason the crowd got so royally jacked up for it, because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. And it's the reason, honestly, why you should go and check this match out, because some of the moves in there are crazy. You could say super crazy. Nonetheless, the match lasted a little too long, but it had the moves executed so smoothly, and the pace being fast and frantic from the bell, while also being fluid too to boot. It was quite fun to just sit back and enjoy the mayhem. It was an unexpected joy that nearly hit the threshold. It may not have been the greatest match ever, but it was a damn entertaining one for that, and it is a 2 3/4 star match. Not bad for a match that I didn't think anything of beforehand when I booted this up on the network. Next, we have the Extreme Rules World Heavyweight Championship match from a SmackDown ECW standpoint, and it will pit the incumbent champion Rey Mysterio against Sabu. Now, fresh off defeating JBL in a match that sent the wrestling god from SmackDown for good to the happiness of pretty much every wrestling fan in the known universe, Mysterio was approached by Paul Heyman, offering him the chance to defend his world title in a match against Sabu at One Night Stand, in a dream match that many had wanted to see for years, which Mysterio gladly accepted. But over the coming weeks, rumours circulated that Mysterio was going to defect to ECW after the show. And likely people were saying, look, he's an ECW guy who came through ECW to start his wrestling career in the US. He has to go to ECW. but Mysterio quashed those rumours, stating that even though that statement was true, that ECW brought him to mainstream audiences and the US all those years ago, it was SmackDown that he'd called his home since arriving in WWE, and he knew where his loyalties lay, which was nice, and Heyman amicably accepting it, wishing him luck against Finlay later on in the evening. But of course, that was not meant to be, as Mysterio got assaulted by Sabu, who drove him through a table to send a clear message to the world champion that thanks to his decision of loyalty, ECW was ready and willing to take that title away from him. And also, I have to point this out, back at this time they called the World Heavyweight Championship the World Championship to de-emphasize the fact that Mysterio, a cruiserweight, was holding the Heavyweight Championship. It was stupid looking back on it, and it just made him look even weaker because it felt like he wasn't even included in a class amongst everyone else. It was really bad. Anyway, the title match ended in a double knockout after Sabu hit Mysterio off a springboard DDT through a table propped up on the barricade and the ring apron in 9 minutes and 10 seconds. Now, this was a dream match, of course, that was highly anticipated back in 2006, and for it to end in the way it did, in my honest opinion, ruined it. This match was just starting to build its momentum after a shaky start with both men exchanging momentum like they were throwing a hot potato between one another, using their speed to make this match look frantic, exciting, and incredible. All of their moves got bigger and more insane, which built the crowd up, and they were waiting for a climax to finish this match up. But I bet they were waiting for a few minutes to want that. Instead, they got this. Just not in the way they expected it to inevitably go. I understand the reasoning behind the finish though, because WWE didn't want Mysterio to look weaker than he already was on pay-per-view, and to ensure that Sabu got put over as a legitimate threat, which, knowing most wrestling fans, they knew how amazingly dangerous Sabu is, so it doesn't make any sense. But nonetheless, both of those goals were accomplished by this finish, but the ECW fans weren't happy that Sabu wasn't allowed to get the job done, and it's not the first time that they show their antagonism towards this. Look at the December to Dismember 2006 review I did last Christmas to highlight that antagonism. It is pretty horrifying that they just never got Sabu given the chance. It ate them up inside. Nonetheless, this match was a solid one that had a lot of fun chair moves and high-flying action, and if it had a little more time, it could have been built into a great match that would have lived up to the hype that people put before it. Then again, it's a 2-star match, and that isn't a bad feat to reach, but this could have been much, much more than it was. Next, we have the 6-person intergender Extreme Rules Tag Team matchup. As a long title, pitting Edge, Mick Foley and Lita against the ECW originals Tommy Dreamer, Terry Funk and Beulah McGillicuddy. Now, the build-up for this match arguably had the longest run to it and the most heated of any match on this card, so this might take a little while for me to remind you all of what happened if you can't remember or don't know what happened. If so, sit back and let me take you through the insanity that got this match to the card. Edge and Mick Foley, of course, had a fantastic hardcore match at WrestleMania 22, which Edge won with that now famous flaming spear through the table. Of course, after failing to capture the WWE Championship in the following months, Edge noted that even though his WrestleMania match was tarnished by Joey Styles' commentary, he stole the show. Foley was himself called out, stating that since the match, he now respects Edge, knowing that he believed the Rated R superstar finally understood what being hardcore meant by taking that spot and by giving him a defining WrestleMania moment. Even in defeat, for him, it was all worth it, as even in defeat he came out feeling like an absolute winner. Edge rebuffed that sentimentality, claiming that Foley was on crack, and challenged him to a match, which ended up being a hardcore triple threat match, with Foley bringing Tommy Dreamer in to help take Edge down. However, as the match came and gone, Foley double-crossed Dreamer and beat him up with a barbed wire baseball bat, with Edge helping to take the ECW original down, forming the most unlikely of alliances between these two foes following the mauling. The next week, Terry Funk then got involved, with Foley proclaiming that the Mania match that he was in with Edge to be the greatest hardcore match ever done, and he didn't want the second-rate talent that ECW produced to sully the reputation of what he and Edge achieved, with Funk reminding Foley that ECW made him part of his family, which Foley decried, noting the times in which neither man were there for each other. This is dark shit. Seriously. Good God. A fistfight then ensued, with Edge making the save and Funk being on the receiving end of a mandible claw. The next week on Raw, Foley presented Edge with the original Hardcore Championship in a frame, of course, nonetheless. Saying how he now defined what being hardcore is, both of them decided to be crowned the co-holders of the championship. And this led to a pissed-off Paul Heyman to show up, calling Foley a prostitute for selling out to Edge and Lita, who call the whore in his own regards, but he wouldn't let him do the same to ECW, challenging Foley and Edge to a tag match between two ECW wrestlers at One Night Stand, with Funk and Dreamer answering the call and joining the brawl, making the match official. Now, on the WWE vs ECW special, Edge defeated Dreamer with the help from Foley and Lita, with Lita sitting on Dreamer's face in a sexual pose, which was quoted as saying, "I bet Dreamer liked that," from King. Ugh. Disgusting. Nonetheless, Foley then unleashed a fantastic tirade of a promo where he slammed ECW's fans for thinking he sold out when he went to the WWE in 1996, saying that he achieved more there than he could have ever done in ECW, and while admitting that the matches he had with Funk in Japan were more violent than his WrestleMania match with Edge, none of them would compare to the horrors that him and Edge will be unleashing on Sunday. And finally get ECW out of his life for good. And I'm going to say this right now, this match isn't even close to being done yet. Oh no, this is insane. We have another 3-star plus quality match on the card. And that means more play-by-play detail. And before we get to this match, there's even more preamble to go with. As Foley said upon entering the ring in that Hammerstein ballroom that he once represented ECW when it was owned by a true creative genius in Stephanie McMahon, which made the crowd absolutely eat him alive. It was... oh my God. Foley was just so savage as a heel at this time, with Edge adding even more fuel to the fire by stating that while this event was the ECW fans' Christmas, so to speak, with their Santa being Jewish, fat, bald, and taking a lot of bullshit. This is insane! And then Lita slammed Beulah McGillicuddy, stating that her sitting on Dreamer's face in that pin that I mentioned was better for him than sleeping with that skank. Holy crap. I mean, this was just savage. Beulah, though, didn't take kindly to this. Now, I highlight that the match was a tag team match prior to this moment happening. Beulah came out, and upon accompanying her husband and Funk to the ring, laid down the law challenging Lita to make the match 3-on-3, seeing as Lita loves threesomes so much. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just loving the fact of how blunt these guys are, leading to a bitch slap match as both women fight and are then restrained. And the bell then rings, so we need to actually start talking about what happened in this thing. I mean, the preamble is just nuts. What the hell's the match gonna be like? It's ridiculous. Oh, good God almighty. Dreamer hits Edge with a shoulder takedown, with Edge fighting out, missing an enziguri as Dreamer tells him to fight, which he obviously attempts to. Foley is then tagged in, challenging Funk to fight from the ropes, and with the Texas Madman granting him his wish, he slaps Foley right round the face to the crowd's immense delight. Foley says, I don't want to be here anymore, and tries to leave, but Funk goes to the outside for an attack as Edge helps out, with Dreamer sending the Rated R Superstar to the outside. Dreamer spits water in Edge's face as Funk hits a commemorative chair over the head of Foley, with a sign to the head following for Edge. This match has started becoming anarchic already, as the referee has just abandoned all traditional tag match proceedings, with this match just going all over the place. Good God almighty, with Dreamer nailing Foley with a lid and Edge with a can, as the ECW legends take control, with Dreamer drop-kicking the can into Foley's head with quite a sick thud, I might add. Dreamer misses the baking tray to the head on the post as Edge fires back with a shot of his own as Foley nails Funk right in the head as momentum is swinging ridiculously quickly. While Foley beats Funk down in the aisleway, Edge takes a ladder to Dreamer's head as "fuck you Edge" chants come from the crowd, who I remember last year told him "you screwed Matt," of course. Edge lines up a spear into the ladder in the corner. Dreamer counters, arm dragging Edge into it back first. Funk then channels his inner Bubba Ray Dudley, lining up some ladder helicopters to Foley and Edge's heads, with one of them slightly botching. Funk then climbs up the ladder into the corner, but Edge takes over it from Dreamer and pushes Funk off of it. Please note, Terry Funk at this time was a 61-year-old who had some hip replacements. Bloody hell, that was a sick bump from him. Dreamer gets up and lines up Death Valley Driver onto the ladder, but Lita hits him with a low blow to break it up, with Dreamer selling like a boss, mind you. Edge then goes onto the ladder, Edge and Foley goes to the apron, and takes out a barbed wire board, with the crowd chanting "holy shit," and that is for good reason, mind you, because this weapon has not been seen since Orton and Cactus Jack's barbaric, brilliant Street Fight Extreme Rules hardcore match at Backlash 2004, 2 years prior. Oh, the crowd are loving this. Edge and Foley drop it onto Dreamer, who writhes in pain as the audience reacts accordingly. Edge pulls the board away, which tears at the skin and you can see it. Foley and Edge got to remove it, but Funk then trips them up and it lands on Foley. "We want fire" chants then break out as Funk and Dreamer line up Foley for a whip into the board, but Foley puts on the brakes, but after a few punches, they throw Foley in hair first. It is sickening. Dreamer goes after Edge, but is lined up on the metal barricade balls first. Good God. Foley, in the meantime, throws the board onto Funk, and Edge is bleeding from his head as Lita gets a fresh ring of barbed wire, which Foley wraps around his arm and lines up a forearm onto the bloody Funk, who is now bleeding profusely from the head and the arm. Foley adds even more punishment by raking the barbed wire over the face of Funk, who shouts in absolute pain that it's gone directly into his eye and he's taken out of the match by medical staff. And the crowd are chanting "you sick fuck" at Foley for good reason, because this match is starting to become quite uncomfortable to watch as the violence gets ever more intense. The face of one shocked fan says it all, as you can see if you watch this show, and even Styles and Taz can't believe what they're seeing. Styles and Taz can't believe it? You know it's worth the time. The crowd, however, are on their feet again, chanting for Sandman in the midst of this hardcore high they've got, because Sandman and Dreamer, you know how the rest goes. Foley grabs the barbed wire bat and slams it across the back of Dreamer. It gets even worse as Lita leg drops the barbed wire bat over his groin. Beulah just looks on and is just in shock of watching her husband endure this punishment. It's brilliant. Foley then grabs Mr. Socko and hits a mandible claw on Beulah. Oh my god, this match is just nuts. Dreamer then fights through the pain to save his wife, because love conquers all apparently, but ends up on a mandible claw and a spear of his own. Edge and Lita now focus on Beulah, as Edge shoves her into his crotch and drags her into the center of the ring, and they lock her in an abdominal stretch, performing sexual poses while berating her. And oh, it's horrible. The crowd, though, is distracted as Terry Funk returns with a bloody bandage over his eye, coming out with an even bigger barbed wire bat in hand. Or it could be a barbed wire 2x4, it's either one. Thanks to the distraction, Dreamer lays in a double low blow as Lita runs with Beulah in tow. Funk hits the bat to the back of the head and chest of both Edge and Foley, and it gets even more insane because Funk lights the damn thing on fire. Yes, he does. He swings it at Foley, setting his hair on fire in the process, and he hits him off the apron into the barbed wire board. Holy crap! Oh, Edge then decided to hit Funk into the board as well. These two are writhing in agony on the floor on a barbed wire board. Oh my god, there's blood everywhere. The crowd are losing their shit. It is ridiculous. All's not finished, though, in hardcore warfare, as Dreamer hits a DDT and chokes Edge with a barbed wire lasso. This is horrible stuff. This is sick. Lita breaks up the count, but Beulah hits a hair pull slam and a catfight that ensues, which of course Joey Styles loves. This match is just absolutely anarchy, and Lita is then grabbed by Dreamer, ready for a Dreamer driver, and it then connects. Dreamer and Beulah pose for this amazingly rabid crowd who are loving every second, but then Edge does arguably the sickest thing in this entire match, rakes Dreamer's eyes with the barbed wire and hits an Edge-o-matic with it. Oh my god, Beulah is even more horrified than she was earlier, and is then hit with a spear to add insult to injury. Holy crap! Edge then disgustingly mind you, covers her in the missionary position to get the 3 for his team to end this godforsaken bloodbath in 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, Edge and Lita, they get the hell out of there quickly, pulling Foley out of the barbed wire along the way, which looks horrible, as Dreamer carries Beulah out of the ring, with Funk screaming in pain as he's cut from the barbed wire. The fans chant "Thank you, Terry," and applaud the 3 legends in appreciation as they make their way to the back. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a fan of hardcore spotfest. It's one of the reasons I got into watching wrestling to begin with. However, this one was incredibly uncomfortable to watch. I mean, the spots being done, the use of barbed wire and fire, combined with Funk's eye injury, and the overly sexification of Beulah in this thing, it made the match scintillating to watch. Do not deny that, but also terrifying and incredibly unsettling at the same time. Mostly because I couldn't tell if Funk was so good at selling it was unreal, or he was legit hurt. I was just sickened by how Beulah was treated. And the commentators were uncomfortable, as were parts of the crowd, and most certainly the viewing audience at home were, which I bet was what all 6 people involved in the match wanted to do, to show off how far ECW had to go back then to highlight its hardcore violence. We already highlighted earlier that tag match highlighted their insane athleticism and technical ability was shown by Angle and Orton earlier. This is the trifecta in highlighting what ECW was known for, and it showed itself thusly, and arguably the most violent match on any WWE sanctioned program we've probably ever seen. Knowing how intense the build was, this match lived up to the billing and was as brutal as it could have gotten, with the story powering it through with might. The crowd loved it, chanting when applicable, and not disrupting the match, much like the Orton Angle one earlier, giving this a Colosseum-like atmosphere for the carnage to rightly bounce off it as it got more and more insane. However, it did take time for them to get into the match, not caring for its opening 5 or 6 minutes until the weapons started flowing in. The move variety, match length and pacing and my enjoyment were a little bit where this match does lose marks, as it descended into anarchy, losing all sense of rules and regulation quickly, turning into a tornado tag and losing all semblance for order, and with the time going right with a pace that didn't help matters, as it was all over the place, making it really quite difficult to keep up with. Even through the barbed wire, fire, trash cans, ladders, while all those were greatly used, they weren't done in any unique way to substantiate that category from rising anywhere. I'd seen these things before. In fact, the stuff with the barbed wire board I saw 2 years earlier with Cactus Jack and Orton. Well, outside of the barbed wire Edge-o-matic and the leg drop to the balls with that thing, that was, oh my god. And Funk did his helicopter swings, which is okay, I guess. The thing is, this match, overall, was insane, just to watch, and while I would recommend you watch it, I don't want to put advisory warnings on anything, but it's not for the faint-hearted, as it proved hard for me to watch. And when it comes to wrestling, I'm not usually that flinched by things, but this, oh my word, this, ladies and gentlemen, was a 3.25 star match, and rightfully it deserves it. Now, it didn't get a rating from Dave Meltzer at the time, and I'm guessing because it descended into an unregulatable bloodbath rather than an actual wrestling match, but I will give it the marks for the story that it told and the madness that made the crowd go nuts, combining a good time and some of my enjoyment to it, and it deserves it. It deserves the 3.25 star rating. And you know what? It'll take me a while to get this match out of my head for sure. Knowing that match took 15 minutes from starting description to analysis to finish, we need to get through the rest of this review probably as quick as I possibly can, and we can do that pretty easily now with another ECW exhibition match with Balls Mahoney taking on Masato Tanaka. Now, again, no reason for the build-up, but Mahoney beat Tanaka off a stiff-as-fuck chair shot for the win in 5 minutes and 3 seconds. Now, this match wasn't very interesting, and it featured the combination of aggressive offense, crowd interaction, and weapon shots that the original ECW was again known for. I'll give credit to Balls Mahoney trying to add some story by selling his own endurance as both men shifted momentum and kept a consistent pace throughout, which made those 5 minutes just fly by and the crowd seemed to enjoy it. I will say that chair shot by Mahoney that ended the match made my blood curl. Good God almighty. Nonetheless, this match wasn't really that good and gets the markup title of worst proper match of the night at half a star. It took 5 proper matches into this card to hit a poor rating, and I've got to say, I'm quite impressed. But then again, if there's one thing this match taught me is that the late Balls Mahoney was one tough motherfucker. The same could be said for Tanaka though. Even though this encounter didn't even get close to touching the match he had with Mike Awesome the year before, I'm guessing they wanted to do it again in this event, but they couldn't get Awesome to do it, so they had to take Balls Mahoney on board instead. Fine by me. They did their job to quell the crowd from the barbarism they just saw, and for what little quality it gave, they did just that. Finally, after all we've already heard and seen here on this event, and it includes a Sandman and Eugene segment, which is both cringe-inducing and awesome in all its glory, we reach the highly anticipated main event no disqualification match for the WWE Championship, pitting the champion John Cena of Monday Night Raw in hostile territory against the returning homecoming king, Rob Van Dam. Now, Van Dam, fresh off losing his Intercontinental Championship match in a 3-on-2 handicap bout, which also had Cena's WWE Championship on the line too, he interrupted Cena's post-match celebration the next week, stating that rather than defend and cash in his Money in the Bank contract on Raw, where he'd probably get screwed over by management again, he would instead cash it in at a specific event, ECW One Night Stand, a place where he felt comfortable and at home, before laying Cena out with a Van Daminator to the briefcase. And of course, following that, Paul Heyman drafted him to ECW, which we all know about. The next week, at the match's official contract signing, Van Dam threatened that if he were to win, he would rechristen the belt the ECW Championship, reminding Cena that every person in the Hammerstein Ballroom will hate his guts and boo him out of the building. Cena rebutted, reminding RVD that even though he respected ECW for what it did for wrestling in the 90s, he'd been booed out of buildings before, even while defending the WWE Championship, and he'd be going through it all again and be willing to do so to teach Van Dam a lesson, wishing him good luck for Sunday, before Sabu and the ECW army came out to put him down. Finally, at the ECW vs WWE special, Cena delivered his final rallying cry by saying that if the belt that Sammartino, Hogan and Austin held fell into ECW's hands, the biggest riot in history would take place. If Van Dam and ECW were out to make a statement, then Cena would be there to make an even bigger one, not just by defeating Sabu on this show, but also at the pay-per-view by taking Van Dam down for good. Now, while this match did go into 3-star plus quality territory, I've limited the amount of these match analysis things to 2 per review. As you may have noticed, the 6-person tag match took 15 minutes of this review, and we're nearly reaching the approximation of near 45 minutes here. I don't want to have to make this review any longer than it could possibly go. Nonetheless, Rob Van Dam managed to pull off the impossible victory, the impossible dream, as Mr. Andy Williams, or Hank Williams, or whatever Williams it is, said in that amazing song by pinning Cena off a 5-star frog splash following interference by Edge and the 3 count by Paul Heyman to win the WWE Championship and be anointed the ECW champion, of course, in 20 minutes and 41 seconds. As the show goes off the air with the ECW fans going completely and utterly mental, we wondered what would happen next. And unluckily for us, it would be a hard road ahead for the ECW brand. But at least on this night, it had a crowning moment to finish off the show. This match was, in all fairness, much better than I expected it to be, but even though both men tried to beat the living crap out of each other and replicate the aggression that the build-up had, they were distracted and perhaps overwhelmed by the insane pro-ECW crowd that filmed the Hammerstein Ballroom that day. They were already savage in 2 prior matches, so you could understand that they got even more pumped up and more ridiculous for this one. And while it helped the intensity of the match build as it went to its 20-minute runtime, it made the match look better than it was, and as it was highly entertaining, it was all good, but it lacked in power and substance as a match overall, despite Cena and RVD's best efforts, as both men had large chunks of offense, with Cena playing the heel, playing down the crowd, which was pretty good, using hardcore elements in order to feel like he's at one with RVD here, which when you combine it with some insane moves that RVD used, the match slowly got itself going, and honestly, the crowd did slow down frequently in this thing, but I will give Cena credit for trying and RVD for hanging in, because it made the match a pretty good and a pretty solid entertaining spectacle to watch, and the ending was just madness, and you know how the rest went. The fact is, for me, it is a 3-star match. The thing is though, if it wasn't for the crowd, this match wouldn't have even been close to reaching this mark, which is saying something, and as a result, the fans are left going home happy, and whilst I reflect on what has been quite a solid event, this match could have been a little better, but for what it got, I can't be too disappointed, can I? A 3-star match through mostly crowd reaction alone. What is there not to like? Nonetheless, everybody, let's look at my final thoughts on what has been quite a crazy event to analyse. The original One Night Stand event in 2005 went down very well with fans and critics alike, being the hellraiser of a night that it promised to be. So you'd think that the second running of such an event would really have problems living up to the hype, acclaim, match quality, crowd noise, etc, etc. You'd think that a sequel is never as good as the original, and many WWE matches have proven that. However, by looking at the ratings given here, this event more than matched its predecessor. The matches were of a very high quality, with only 2 of the matches of the 7 on offer going below 2 stars, with 3 of them in 3-star quality territory, which gives this event a good calling card to have as its own. The matches were exciting and scintillating to watch, and when combined with an overhanging ECW vs WWE mentality in the crowd and the build-up that was booked to perfection in the prior month leading up to this show, it made this event feel massive and worthy of the time to watch it. And while I would have been happy with some of the match's quality and some of the finishes and timings, it would have been a little better, but when I come out of this show surprised at the quality of how good it is, I shouldn't have much room to complain in. And I don't. Because the thing is, I watched this match live in 2006 on Sky Sports. I remember it being solid, but nothing great. Because again, I was stuck in WWE's mind control of, oh, they're the best company ever, so seeing them go down, to me, didn't fill me with much good hope. Then again, looking at this critically, in my mind now, 10 years later, I've got to say, I wasn't expecting this show to be this good, but my god, Heyman and WWE knew exactly what to do to make ECW, for at least this night in its revival in WWE's banner, be taken seriously, and that work paid off wonderfully. This event highlighted through almost all of its matches the different layers of what made ECW great, and it highlighted that with such brilliant storytelling, the event had more purpose than many of WWE's pay-per-views that came up later in the year, which is quite ridiculous, I've got to say. Now, this event may have had some of its bad moments be highlighted for the world to see. Most of them weren't even in the matches, but they are greatly overshadowed by the quality of the matches on offer, and it should be reflected in the final rating I'm about to bestow. Ladies and gentlemen, ECW One Night Stand 2006 gets a 7.5 out of 10. This is an event that if you haven't seen, you should go watch it now. Go on the WWE Network and watch it. If you've been watching while you've been looking at this review, well done to you. And if you haven't seen it in a while, go and rewatch it too. Get your DVD, the network subscription, whatever you need to do. Go watch this. This is well worth your time and more than just the hype of the main event deep. This was an event that did all it could to get you into that ECW spirit, and by golly, did it work. If only the brand was allowed to have kept this momentum going, things for the WWE ECW brand might have turned out differently than we already know it did. There we have it, everybody. The ECW 2006 Friday Flashback review for October 2016 is done. This was so fun to watch back. And seriously, if you haven't considered watching it again, I would again advise it. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, have you enjoyed this review? Do you feel I did it justice, Ray? Do you think this event was worth it? Do you think that my opinions are justified? All you have to do is put your opinions in the comment section. I would be glad and very, very happy to read and discuss with them. And if you want to not miss out on the next Friday Flashback next month, which isn't too far away, considering it's late October now, all you have to do is click the subscribe button down there, and you will not miss a thing. You can also go onto CC Network YT on Twitter to keep up with any video releases that come, because in the coming months, the return to the channel's upload schedule should be on track. And I say should be because it's still tentatively up in the air as we speak. Nonetheless, November's Friday Flashback pay-per-view is going to be a very good one as well, because it's a pay-per-view review that I originally did back in 2011 when I just started out realizing, hey, I can review old shows. It'll be great. And the thing is, it's been since then that I haven't seen that show. And it's part of the Big Four series I'm doing every 2 Flashback reviews. We've already covered 2002's other 2 Big Four pay-per-views before this. Now we're looking at SummerSlam 2002, one of the best pay-per-views ever. Let's hope that 5 years after I last saw it, this event can live up to the hype and the quality that this one delivered this month. It's going to be a tall order, but we're going to have to see how it goes down in November. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people listening. This has been a Friday Flashback pay-per-view review for the CC Network, and I will see you all next time. Cheers!